We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday pit stop on the Free Association Radio weekly circuit. This is Navigating the Astrological Matrix. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'm your host. It is just afternoon here in South Central Texas, and I got to tell you, the weather is weird. There's some weird weather happening. This morning we had some pretty significant gusts of wind. I'm guessing around 30 miles per hour. It's dark. It's overcast. It's moody. The weather is moody. And yesterday, our good friends in the White Plains were doing all kinds of interesting aerial ballets over the skies behind the cloud cover. So we are getting hit with chemtrails again. We had a nice little respite there for a while. Unfortunately, I know that a lot of the rest of the country is also being bombarded by aerial spraying, and you can just go on Facebook, and any number of pages there will confirm this. A good friend of the show and frequent chat room habitué, Enla, was posting some pictures from Phoenix just a couple days ago, and I got to tell you, it was horrific. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, and I've seen a lot of chemtrail activity and chemtrail pollution and foul in the air, and that was not a good one. That was kind of epic. So you have to ask yourself, what's going on? Why is there such a concentrated and focused effort right around this time? Is it perhaps because something else is happening or occurring and coming in our direction? We'll talk about that on today's show. We're going to get into Asteroid QE2, a curious name for an asteroid, since it is named after the current queen. We'll talk about that a little bit later as we get into the show and find out where it's going to be, how far away, and if indeed it might impact what we're going through. And impact is a loosely loaded word. I don't think it's going to hit us. However, asteroids have been known to break off. It's 1.5 miles wide, this asteroid. Even if we had something as big as 1/8 of a mile hitting this planet, it could be significant. Extremely significant. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. We've also got the Mars transition that's coming up on the 1st. We're going to get into the anaretic degree of Mars from Taurus to Gemini, and we'll get into the 0 degrees Mars as it relates to the Sabian symbol for it, which is an interesting Sabian symbol, and one that is somewhat hopeful, to be honest with you. So we'll get into that and some other goodies, astrological. Of course, I'll be doing some readings, so if you are interested in having me look at your chart and getting into that world with you, I will be more than happy to. The world is not ending. It will carry on. However, our response to it is always the frontline approach and experience of our own lives, and being informed and understanding the cycles and doing your best to extract the divine principle nature and who you are via wisdom and timing and rhythm, grace, surrender. It's all part of the deal, and you can find out more about that here as the show progresses, because ultimately what I'm about, and hopefully what other people are about, are growing closer to what we would call God. And for me, astrology is an adjunct to that. It is not counter to it. It is not the invocation of a lesser god or lesser gods. It's Jungian to some extent. And we'll get into more of that later as well. Let's see, what is happening in the news? Well, there's a lot happening. There's a lot going on. Just from a cultural perspective, this is perhaps a trifle and superficial, but it does relate to astrology. I recently got into watching Mad Men. And some of you are familiar with the hit TV series on AMC. It's about an advertising firm on Madison Avenue during the 1960s. It actually starts in 1958, the cusp of the 60s. And you follow the lives in the arc of various storylines and narratives of about 8 people who are, it's about 10 people. It's interesting how they can weave so much in so many different plot lines into the show itself. So, but anyway, there's all these different arcs going on, and all these different characters, and they all stand for something. They all stand for something. But there are layers and levels to Mad Men that's really interesting. Now, I didn't get into Mad Men on purpose for quite a while. First of all, when it came out, I didn't have a TV. Okay, let me rephrase that. I didn't have, what was that, 2000 and, I think it came out in 2006. I think that was the first season for Mad Men, right? 2006, 2007. So I did have a TV. I was in a marriage at that time, and I don't know why. I think it was because I would probably like it too much. I think that was my excuse at the time for not getting into Mad Men. And then it just kind of, and then once a series gets going, right, you don't want to just really drop in and try to figure things out because of the development of the characters, the plot line, and all that stuff. So after about season 3, I thought, well, I kind of missed the boat on this. I may as well just, give up the ghost. And then I got Netflix, and I kept seeing the Mad Men image on Netflix. I'm like, oh man, it's on Netflix. And I know that there are people out there who listen to this who've got into like these Netflix runs. It's called Netflixing. When you find a show and you just burn through everything. And it's a huge time suck. Huge. And I've done that with a couple of shows. There's an animated TV series called Archer, which I love. I think it's funny as hell. And once I discovered Archer, boom, done. Went through the whole thing. I did the same thing with the Louis C.K. show on FX. Archer and Louis C.K. both FX shows. So I knew that with 6 seasons of Mad Men, they're in season 7, it goes up to season 6 on Netflix. With 6 seasons in the books, I knew that there was this potential to be possessed by this TV show, which is why I held it at bay. And finally, I opened the door to the bowl, and I allowed Mad Men to flood my life. And my sleep has not been the same since. It's not good for me. Anyway, one of the things that I've noticed about Mad Men is that there is an occult and esoteric layer to what's going on in the show, which is interesting. Of course, for me, it's interesting. And most people will hone in on maybe the male-to-male, slightly homoerotic angle to all these guys who are stuck in perpetual adolescence at this ad agency. There's that piece from a sociological angle. Then there's the female characters and how they represent and reflect the nature and the tenor of the times. You know, you have Betty, who is the frustrated housewife, swept up in tradition and the current of the consensual belief that you get married, you have kids, you have a nice home, and then you fall into a grave, but you keep up a nice appearance, you look good for your husband, you support him, you cook his meals along the way, unless, of course, he's a serial philanderer, in which case it drives you insane. And then you begin to find yourself. And she is becoming kind of a template, a cipher for the women's movement or femininity or feminine power. She's becoming an empowered female. She just recently slept with Don after they'd been divorced, and she got remarried to a politician. Well, she slept with him, but she slept with him on her terms, not his. Of course, the balance of power is shifting, and the specter of Betty and the character of Betty is now rising in the Mad Men pantheon. She's becoming the character of the show, which is the tenor for our times. Then you have Peggy, and Peggy is kind of the archetypal feminist or proto-feminist at the turn of the middle 20th century, where she breaks out of the mold of being a secretary and steps into a man's world and tries to straddle both her innate femininity and her ambition, which doesn't always go all that well. However, she's fascinating to watch. And Elizabeth Moss, who plays her, is amazing. The amount that she can emote through her eyes alone is tremendous. Phenomenal actress. And then there's Joan, and Joan is the personification of the every gal, right, or the gal Friday. And she's also the lady in red, since she has red hair and often dresses in red. Although once she got married, which is really interesting, once she got married, she changed her color palette and went to other colors besides red, purples, blues, and greens. But Joan is the earth goddess. Joan is like Hathor, big-bosomed, always meeting the needs of the men inside the office, always having the right amount of decorum, can keep a secret. She's Hathor. In some ways, she's kind of like Isis in some ways. She's not quite Ceres, although she does have a child. That's a whole other part of the plot. And so those are the three women characters, and you see their development against the backdrop of the times. So there's that you can get into that from the feminine perspective, and you can get into the development of the males from the male perspective. You know, there's Roger and his midlife crisis, and there's Don. Don is the most fascinating character in the show, bar none. Although Pete Campbell is quite interesting as well for different reasons. But Don Draper, and this is where the astrology piece comes in, because I've been noticing some interesting things in regards to his character as it relates to the sign of Gemini. Now, Don Draper is two people, right? He is Don Draper and he is Dick Whitman. So what do we have here? We have Gemini in action. He is a bifurcated persona, and both Dick Whitman and Don Draper represent two different aspects, and he can never quite shake Dick Whitman. The only time he can reconcile himself with being Dick Whitman is when he would spend time with Don Draper's widow. That's the only time Dick Whitman can come out. And when he is there, unfortunately she's passed away, which leads me to a whole nother piece about Dawn and the triple goddess, which we'll talk about as well. But how can people drop off the line when I'm talking like this? I know you're here for reading, and I'm just here yammering about Mad Men. It's okay. I will do readings. I promise. I promise I will do readings. And I'll do readings in about 25 minutes or so. But I need to get this Mad Men stuff off me. Do you know why I do this? Because sometimes it takes a long time to write.
And I can just talk sometimes and cover a lot more ground. Anyway, so Don is two people. And he's Don and he's Dick. And that is Gemini. It's a personification of Gemini. It's the bifurcation of self. Two personas, right? Dos personae. And not only is he two people, but his behavior is also representative of Gemini. People don't know who Don is. Don doesn't talk about his past. Gemini, as it relates to the Tarot and the Minor Arcana, is the Prince of Swords. The Prince of Swords is the keeper of secrets and the representation of spycraft. And there's always these illusions in the show, which is really interesting. It's happened two times and I'm only in season 3, but there are two illusions in the show that Don is a secret agent. Now, I'm not saying that he is, but they're hinting at something else. There's something else going on here. There's a scene where he's at a hotel in Baltimore with two stewardesses, and Sal, the closeted homosexual art director, and a pilot. And Sal and Don are saying that they're accountants. They don't want to know that they're ad men. But then Don makes this subtle hint that they're not just really accountants. They're accountants that are attached to crime family money, that maybe perhaps they might be FBI. And then there's another episode where Don, it's season 3, where Don picks up two hitchhikers who are eloping to Niagara Falls, and they wonder if Don is a CIA agent. So these are all pieces that more or less manifest around Don Draper. So he has two patterns of behavior. There's Don, the guy who is the upstanding husband, good father, loves his kids, and does his best to maintain a solid profile in Ossining, New York in the early 60s. And then there's Don, who is the philanderer. Don, who will, he won't poke anything in his skirt, but he comes close. And the women that Don has long-term relationships with are interesting. When I say long-term, these are outside of his marriage. One of the long-term relationships that he has is with, first in the film, the first woman that you really glom onto, other than his East Village artist concubine, is the daughter of a department store, very, very important department store and successful department store in New York City. Her last name is Mencken, and she's Jewish. So Don not only crosses the barrier line between being married and then having a lover outside of the marriage, but he also crosses cultural and religious lines with this woman. And so there's this sense here that Don is looking for Sophia. He's looking for wisdom, and he keeps tapping this woman Mencken for knowledge about a lot of different things, but mostly about Israel and Zionism, which I thought was quite interesting because Israel comes to Don as a client, comes to Cooper Sterling as a client. Cooper Sterling is an interesting name. Cooper is copper and Sterling is silver. Copper is Venus and silver is the moon. So again, we're looking at the invocation of the goddess and the feminine through the show. And Don's other more LTR sort of affairs are with Carol Rosen, who is interesting. She lives down the hall from Don in this apartment building, and she has a Jewish last name, but she's wearing a cross. So either Carol is Catholic and married somebody who is Jewish, or she's Jewish and she wears a cross and is crossing her own line in her own way. So there's another sort of interesting angle in terms of Sophia, the goddess, and maybe even Lilith. I mean, these women might actually represent Lilith as well. the wife who was cast out of Eden. Another woman who Don has about a 3-episode LTR with is Bobby Barrett, who is the wife of Jimmy Barrett, the comedian, and Bobby Barrett is also Jewish. So there are 3 Jewish women, or 2 Jewish women, and one who you don't know what her religious persuasion is that Don has these intense encounters with. So it's interesting to note that. He has other affairs, obviously, but these are 3 that are fairly important. He also has an affair with his therapist, which I haven't gotten to, but I know about it. And there are 3 separate episodes where a woman plays the role of a prophetess to Don. There's the Anna Draper scene in California where she does a tarot card reading for him. And Don gets the Aeon and he gets the universe. If you look at the end of Mad Men, the last image you see is the Sun card from the Rider-Waite deck. This is a Lionsgate production. Lion is also representative of Leo, the Sun. So there's some mysticism that's running through Mad Men in a very interesting way. The therapist also gives Don a prophecy about how after he divorces from Betty that he'll be married within a year. And then there's a third prophecy which takes place with one of the partner's daughters. It's one of the new agencies that they sucked up. The daughter comes back from the funeral and does i-ching readings for people at the office. By now, the series has moved on into the mid-60s, 1967. And she essentially says Don's heart is broken. Don is broken. So again, we have this meeting with the goddess, and it comes in 3s. There are the 3 women who are more than likely Jewish. There are the 3 women who are prophetesses and give him prophecy. And so the 3 goddesses are the triple-headed goddess. And then you have the copper and you have silver. So you have Venus and the moon, Luna and Venus. It's a very interesting premise. Now, in terms of also more duality in Gemini, they come up with this one ad at one point. I forget. I think it's for Playtex, because Playtex and Maidenform were competing at that time. And Maidenform was known as the bra that was more revealing, sophisticated, sexy. Remember, Jane Russell was the spokesperson, the spokeswoman for Maidenform. And Playtex was known as the sturdy bra, the bra that's, gave you support and never failed you. So what they did is they tried to re-engineer Playtex's image, and they came up with this campaign for Marilyn Monroe and Jackie Kennedy, which is interesting. And they showed the 2 of them in this black and white ad. And of course, Jackie Kennedy's a Sagittarius, Marilyn Monroe is a Gemini. And here we have the duality piece coming again. And as I mentioned, Don is 2 people. He's Don and he's Dick. And according to what I've figured out, Dick Whitman is a Gemini. And Don Draper is a Sagittarius. There you go. So we have this, again, this duality piece running all the way through Mad Men. And then finally, in season 3, this is really interesting, at least I find interesting. In season 3, Betty's dad, Eugene, dies, and Betty is pregnant, while her father, who is staying with them and not right, winds up dying. So you have death and you have life commingling in this sort of dual channel for a while. Now the baby isn't born until Betty's father dies. So there's this progression. And Betty names her son after her father, Eugene. And Don has an issue with it because Don did not get along with her dad. So every day of Eugene's life, Don will be reminded of Betty's dad. And Betty does this on purpose to get back at Don, that this is Betty's closeted aggression towards him, because she knows that this is going to be one of these things that will be a thorn in his side for the rest of his days. But now, again, we have two people, Eugene and Eugene. There's the dead Eugene, and then there's the baby Eugene. In fact, it creates so much confusion that Sally, Don's daughter, has a hard time with it. She actually has kind of a breakdown as a kid, and she wants to know why they just couldn't let Eugene die. Why did they have to name the baby Eugene? It's interesting stuff. Oh, and guess what? Eugene, he's a Gemini. Look, there's a little scene where there's a birth certificate Don signs, or Peggy signs. I think it's Peggy. Who knows? One of the two. June 21st. So this whole Gemini theme runs through Map Men in a really big way. So it just comes back to this Gemini theme that I've been exploring for about the past year as it relates to creation, as it relates to the world that we live in, as it relates to the reality matrix that we occupy, because Gemini is opposite the galactic center. The galactic center is at 26, 27 degrees Sagittarius. So Gemini is the polar opposite to that. And as a result, it dominates our consciousness. It dominates our symbolism. It dominates life on this planet. When we talk about the fall, right? We talk about the fall. We talk about the moving out of the Garden of Eden, which is unified consciousness. We move into a dualistic experience. We move into a realm where we are supposedly cut off in a conscious way from our connection to Source. And that ever since then, we have been literally on a cosmic diaspora trying to reconnect with that place inside of ourselves, which is fully realized consciousness, 24/7, living with the prima facie priori experience of God inside of ourselves. And this has been going on for a long time. Now, here, in terms of the Judeo-Christian calendrical scale, 2,113 years, but it goes on even before that, long before that. And so what happens is that our culture, our symbology, and to a large extent our ideology is dominated by dualism. And it's dominated by Gemini. And I can see it clearly over and over and over again. And I believe that this is a manipulated exercise on the part of any number of people or groups that want to keep us divided. If you look at the patterning, let's say just, you go into a Masonic temple, one of the things you'll see in the floor is a black and white checkerboard floor. Again, it represents the duality of existence, the light and the dark, the balancing of it all out, right? I mean, it's just supposedly, why we're here is to reify and reunify dual consciousness. But is that, I had this conversation with a psychic. It was John Friedlander. I had him on the show. And I was talking to John about dualism. And dualism versus non-dualism. And the non-dual mind is the mystical mind, right? The non-dual mind seeks unity, seeks oneness, seeks wholeness. And the dualistic mind plays in the fields of this world. And I was of the mindset at that time that was a narrow approach to defining reality, that you had to choose one or the other. And I was of the mindset then that the most fluid and the most advanced kind of relationship to all this was to be both dual and non-dual. That you could have a unity consciousness or a unity-oriented consciousness, but you could also, if you needed to, step out of it and break things down into particulars and objectify And ultimately, what comes of the dual consciousness, or the duality, is judgment. Making value judgments. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. This is light, this is dark, this is good, this is evil, this is sin, this is blessing, right? I mean, so this is what happens. And ultimately we come to this point where can we really judge? Do we have the power to judge? And then it takes us all the way back around again to singularity consciousness, which is no, not really, because we're not omniscient. We're not omnipresent, at least not all the time. So at that time, I really thought that, and I still do to some degree, think that we have the spiritual motility to live in a unified realm of consciousness, but also see things in their segmented and at times differentiated form. To me, this is the blending of the two. But I think that there are times in history where we have to move our attention from one of those mindsets to another, and I think we're moving quickly into a mindset of the great mystery, or the great Zen koan of our time, which is to differentiate and to say, we are not this, and we are not that, and we don't want that, and yet at the same time to embrace some greater unified whole. And this is a tough road to sled for humanity. This is the bridge. This is the chasm across the bridge of time that we have to be able to not only build, but then walk across, move across. Because it's imperative that we see how interconnected we are. Not just the human species, but the entire planet. We're all interconnected. Everything. Even mosquitoes, which I hate, they've got to have some function that they perform that interconnects with us on this planet. Mosquitoes were developed in Atlantis, by the way. This is what was told me a long time ago. And strawberries are from Mars. But anyway, so we're at a time now where we have to embrace more of a unity consciousness. We have to. But at the same time, within that embrace, there are points where we have to also say no. Because embracing everything means, oh yeah, we'll embrace Monsanto. That's fine. We'll embrace Monsanto. We'll eat all this terrible food. It's going to kill us and mutate our genes because it's all one. We can't really do that on some level because it will kill us. It will make us sick, right? So at some point, we have to choose life over death. And life, at this point in time, is a precious thing. Trust me, is a very precious thing. If you don't know how precious it is, just wait a few weeks. Because we're on the verge of something right now that is pretty intense. Pretty intense. I don't know if you're following what's happening in Syria. It's a really big deal. It is a really, really, really big deal. So when we talk about Syria, when I get back, and but then we'll get into some astrology stuff. We'll look at QE2, and we'll go from there. How does that sound? Sound good? All right. What do I want to play? I keep telling myself I'm going to upload more music, and I never do. Let me just, what do I want to play here? That was one of my openers at one point in time. Why don't we play? How about this? I'm going to play Town Without Pity. This is Gene Pitney, Ronnie Montrose on guitar. I haven't played this one in a long time. Town Without Pity. This kind of reminds me of Mad Men in the 60s. I'll be back in 3 minutes and 16 seconds. achingly beautiful, the late Ronnie Montrose with A Town Called Pity, made famous originally by the late Gene Pitney. Okay, so we're talking the asteroid coming to a planet near you. It's called QE2, and it's going to be here in just 2 days, 3 million miles away from the planet, although, like I said earlier, it has the potential of chipping off, and there could be more from QE2. QE2 obviously is a reference to Queen Elizabeth II, Queen Elizabeth I. It's amazing how there have only been 2 Queen Elizabeths over the entirety of the royal family that have stepped in to rule the show. Now, Queen Elizabeth I is a very interesting character. She's called the Virgin Queen. I believe she is the personification of the May Queen, although our Queen Elizabeth of this time was born in May, if I'm not mistaken, and who is going through her Saturn return. And I'm sure the Saturn return means something quite different to the royal family than somebody steeped in the cult of Saturn and Saturn worship like the Queen is, versus plebes like you and I who have a different relationship with Saturn. But Queen Elizabeth I is interesting, the Virgin Queen. She's been portrayed over time in a number of films. She was played by Bette Davis not once but twice. And she was also played by Cate Blanchett most recently. And the interesting thing about Queen Elizabeth I is her relationship with the magician John Dee. And John Dee is one of the master astrologers of our time. And it was through her association and relationship with Dee that she actually staged events, particularly her battles against Spain, which every single time she won handily. Thanks in part to extreme meteorological conditions, which always seemed to set the Spanish back as they approached English shores. They never set foot on the English shore. They were always defeated at sea by the British. It's one of the reasons why the British came to rule the seas, because they decimated a lot of the Spanish Armada as a result of the wars that they had with England. Very smart. It's a high-priced gambit, but if you take out most of your greatest competition's ships, then there's a really good chance that you'll have the fast-track lane to the oceans of the world, which is what happened to England after that. Now, one of the things that occurred is that they built a boat, not for Queen Elizabeth I, but Queen Elizabeth II. She had her own boat built for her. And the history of that boat is fairly fascinating. It was built in 1965. And that's when they started to work on it. It was in 1965. And it hit the ocean in 1969 and was actually in service until 2008. And it's in a weird place right now. It's registered in Vanuatu. And Vanuatu is down by Tonga. And it's gone through a number of different hands, and a number of different people and registries have taken on the QE2. What happened is that in December of 2012, it was reported that the QE2 had been scrapped in China for £20 million after a bid to return it to the UK was rejected, with monthly berthing and maintenance charges of £650,000 a month. It was reported that a Chinese salvage crew arrived at the vessel December 21 to replace a crew of 40 which had been maintaining the vessel since it arrived at Port Rashid. However, Cunard dismissed these reports as pure speculation. When the ship was sold in 2007, a clause in the contract which started from her retirement in 2009 stipulated a 10-year no-own sale clause without payment of full purchase price default penalty. The QE2 London plan had included a £20 million bid for the QE2. So on the 17th of January 2013, Dubai Dry Docks World announced that the QE2 will be sent to an unknown location to serve as a floating luxury hotel, shopping mall, and museum. Despite this move, the QE2 London team has stated on the same day, we believe our investors can show Dubai that the QE2 London is still the best proposal. So the QE2, nobody really knows where it is right now. It's at an undisclosed location somewhere in the South Pacific. So it's adrift. And while we don't know where it is, it certainly is coming to us vis-a-vis the asteroid. Now, QE2 also represents, or the term QE also represents quantitative easing. Quantitative easing, which essentially means the printing of money, the mass printing of money to be sold to banks and other lending institutions besides banks. Could be insurance companies, or could be a Goldman Sachs, or whoever is moving money is getting lots of money, and they're getting it cheap, extremely cheap, because the interest rates are so low. So what Ben Bernanke has done is he's basically turned on the money printing presses and is charging zero. Absolutely 0% for all this fake money. And as a result, we're dealing with the potential of deflation, of a deflated dollar, because it's not worth anything. So I think we're on the fourth round of quantitative easing, but that's another sort of cipher for QE2, or QE in particular. So it's coming. It'll be here on Friday, and I think we're going to see dramatic weather. That's my take. I think we're going to see some dramatic weather, and as I talked about before, I played the song by Gene Pitney slash Ronnie Montrose, that there's something major happening in the Middle East. And it's starting to come out now that in the early part of May, the Israelis sunk a submarine. The Syrians sunk a submarine. An Israeli submarine is I think it's called a Greyhound, and was purchased from Germany with your tax dollars, by the way. And it was very close to Syria, and the Syrians apparently sunk this Israeli sub. And the Israelis counterattacked with an airstrike on Damascus. And a lot of people believe that Damascus was hit with dirty nukes, dirty nuke warheads. And I can't confirm that, but it's out there in the internet, and you can research that if you like. But things are heating up intensely in Syria. One of the things that's happened just recently over the past 48 hours is that the UN and NATO have essentially lifted the blockade from the sale of weapons to the quote-unquote Syrian rebels. So now they've given the Syrian rebels, or the Syrian freedom fighters, whoever these people are, hired guns, they've given them the permission to buy as much weaponry and armature as possible, or to have it even donated on spec and paid back after they're, in power, however that works out. That's happening. It happened over the last 48 hours. They've been given carte blanche to use whatever resources they have to arm themselves and to fully invest in a war against Bashar al-Assad and his sovereign government. Now, another thing that's taken place as a result of this is that Barack Obama, and I wrote about this in the newsletter, I think I didn't talk about it on Monday because I wasn't on the show Monday, but Barack Obama has okayed an aerial blockade over Syria. So while they're letting the rebels have as many weapons as they want or need, they are having instituted a no-fly zone over Syria, which is a big deal. It's a very big deal. That means Syria cannot get any supplies via the air. So if things are being flown in, whether it's food, whether it's medicine, whether it's technology, they're going to start to put jets, probably, NATO jets or American jets, flying over Syrian airspace. What are the Syrians going to do? The Syrians are going to take those planes out. This is a major, major line in the sand here that's being crossed. The Maginot Line is being crossed. So what will happen is that all it will take will be one jet to be knocked out of the air, and we're looking at a full-scale war there. The Russians have already agreed to send some very sophisticated missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, to the Syrians. The Israelis have said, you better not do that. And this is all happening right now. And the situation is quite volatile and intense. And I would have no problem seeing what could potentially be World War III break out in that region. It's very close. It is very, very, very close. And it coincides with the approach of asteroid QE2. Now, if you look at QE2, and then you also look at the approach of i-ching or Scion, which is the comet coming at us in November of this year, there's an interesting correlation between the terminology and the nomenclature of the two. QE2, Queen Elizabeth II, and you get into the whole priory of Scion, and then you get into the whole cult of the chalice and bloodlines and the Merovingians and all that stuff. And perhaps why this asteroid was named for her and why Comet Scion or i-ching Scion is meaningful in terms of what it portends. So there's a whole other narrative going on there as well. Now, one of the big things is that Mars is moving, and we talked about this last week. And I'm going to use this as a way to talk about astrology and readings so that you can call up area code 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. Be happy to look at your chart, because it's not all doom, it's not all gloom. Yes, we live in very intense times, perhaps even a time of tribulation. But we're here. We signed up for it. We may as well do our best to navigate through the chaos and through the noise and through the density of our experience. Now, Mars is going to move into Gemini on the 1st. At the analytic degree, it's a very tricky place for Mars. 29 Taurus. It's the final degree, the final few moments and stages of Mars in a fixed sign. Now, when that changes, when that moves, it moves into a mutable sign, which is Gemini. So everything becomes possible. Everything is up in the air at that point. And Mars in Gemini is the most restless aspect of Mars in the zodiac. If you've ever known people that have Mars in Gemini, they are always on the run. They're creatively restless and immensely curious. They make things and then they tear them down. They make things and they tear them down. They make things and they tear them down. They are inventive. They are witty. They're playful. They can also be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Sarcastic and cutting. Mars in Gemini can be quite cutting in terms of its wit. My favorite Mars in Gemini character is the former coach for the Golden State Warriors, Don Nelson, who was a Taurus by nature, but he had Mars in Gemini. And Nelly, his classic Mars and Gemini. He would always do the opposite of what was happening in the game or what people wanted him to do. He was the first coach to institute a basketball lineup where everybody in the court was smaller than everyone else. Mostly in basketball, you would try to get bigger. You try to have a big center and big power forwards, and you try to get a big guard. If you had a point guard that was big, great. If you didn't, you were just a point guard. But in the NBA, it was always bigger was better. Bigger was better. More size better. Don Nelson came along and said, hey, I don't have a bunch of big guys. I'm going to play some small guys. And he found mismatches because the big guys, once they got away from the basket, were no match for his faster, smaller, quicker teams. And they called it small ball. And to this day, it's become a staple now of NBA strategy and coaching. And that was Don Nelson. He was always flipping the script. But when he would reach a pinnacle or a period where he was successful, and all he needed to do was make one or two more moves in order to really bring his success home and be one of the best coaches of all time, he wouldn't do it. He would tinker, he would tear it down, he would lose players, he'd be recalcitrant, whatever he did. And then he would start all over again. And that was Don's MO. And the thing with people with Mars and Gemini is that because they're constantly moving, they're constantly restless, they're constantly curious, constantly doing things, you would think that they would get tired. And they do. However, when people that have Mars and Gemini stop and rest, they can only do it for so long because they become very lethargic and tend to get heavy and depressed. So it's in their best interest if they keep moving. I guess sharks are Mars and Gemini. So with Mars and Gemini, it's coming, and we're in a time where things are, we're dealing with a lot of Taurus energy, although this last weekend we had this wonderful triple conjunction of Jupiter and Venus and Mercury. It was incredible. Some great pictures on the internet of these three planets literally lined up in a row, like a string of pearls. And the energy this weekend was really good. I don't know if you guys felt it, but it was, anytime you get Venus conjuncting Jupiter, life is good. So we had that, and that's moving now, and we're fully in Gemini. But Mars has been a stabilizing force. Mars and Taurus has been a stabilizing force, and now it's going to shift in a really big way this weekend. And like I said, it almost coincides with this 31st date, where the asteroid QE2 is coming in our direction. Now, the Sabian symbol for 1 degree Gemini is called a glass-bottom boat. And it's an interesting symbol because it represents two forms or two realms of consciousness. There's the form or realm of consciousness where people are above the water and they're dry and they're looking down into the glass bottom boat. And it represents the actual reality beneath the boat in the water with the fish. And there's a certain level of detachment that comes along with the symbol, obviously, but it also communicates the opening of a different type of world or purview into an alternate universe. And so when I think of Mars at 1 degree Gemini, I think of timelines. I think of these two realms that exist simultaneously. There's the realm above and then there's the realm below. Now, one is observable and the other is livable. Now, does that extend out to our locus in quote-unquote time and space? Perhaps. But I think even being on the observable side of things would be an interesting place to be. And so what I think is going to happen over the course of the next 3 to 4 days is that we're going to be brought face to face with two potential realities. And this is on a collective level. This is on a global scale, folks. We're going to see the potential for one type of world and the potential for another type of world. And one of the types of worlds that we're living in now is the world around us, the one that we could inhabit, or at least draw into our consciousness, is the one that's below the boat. It's the mystery that we have a view into. So do we have a choice? I think so. I think we have a choice. But that choice isn't necessarily as clear and, for lack of a better term, pragmatic as one might expect. The choice is inside of us. The choice is to live in a particular way, and then the world itself will begin to conform around that particular choice. And this brings us back to this unified consciousness. If enough of us have the ability to choose the type of world that we want to live in, then that world becomes more manifest in our lives than not. And we're in a very critical time. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's a very critical time. What we're witnessing now in Syria is troubling. What we're witnessing in this country in terms of the scandals that are stacking up with our president is also equally troubling. And when these two things come together, one could see where we would have the potential for not just a major distraction, but a major destruction that would turn us away from the quote-unquote scandals, the trifling scandals that here exist at home. IRS, Benghazi, that will dwarf in comparison to an all-out war with Syria. Trust me on this. June is an interesting month in terms of movies and what's being released at the theaters. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you another tease. And I'm going to play some more music. And when I come back, I'm going to go over a few of the movies that we're looking at and being released in June. And I ask you, are these movies being released as a coincidence? Is it just a coincidence that these films are being brought to theaters at this time? I don't know. We'll explore it when I get back. What do I want to play now? How about, let's see, what do I want to play? Let's play Pete 7. This is City again. I like this. This was from last week. Pete 7 played this last week, and 3 minutes, 53 seconds. I'll be back, and we'll talk about the cinematic releases in June and why you want to pay attention.
You're so pretty and sharp as broken glass. This too will come to pass. One blood type, one earth. Don't get bitter when it isn't your fault.
All right, that was Pete 7 and City. Welcome back. You're listening to Navigating the Astrological Matrix. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I wanted to just give you some heads up around some of the movies that are going to be opening between now and the end of June. Of course, this Friday, the epic, post-apocalyptic epic starring Will Smith and his son Jaden, After Earth, that opens across the country, and it should be interesting. That film was moved up, by the way, to the 31st from sometime in June. So we kick off the beginning of June with After Earth. Now, some of the other films that are set to open, there's kind of a theme here, and perhaps you can pick it up as I talk about some of these titles. The Purge, that opens on the 7th, next Friday, and The Purge is set in the future, and it is, in that future, there's no crime, and everybody has a very civilized existence. It's utopia with the exception of one night. And this one night has been set aside so that anybody can do whatever they want without getting caught or punished and prosecuted. It's kind of like a psychic event where the collective psyche is opened up and people can go mad and do anything. Anything. It's the night of the devil. It's the night that celebrates the devil. It's called The Purge. It stars Ethan Hawke. And the title alone is interesting, The Purge. The cover for the poster is also, of course, interesting, looking in some ways like Barack Obama. It's kind of interesting. But also you get your Eye of Horus effect. That's happening, The Purge. That starts on the 7th. So we have After Earth and The Purge. Okay. Then we have a few days after that opening, well, that's actually on the 7th, the same day as The Purge, Rapture Palooza. Let me read you the description for Rapture Palooza. This is the storyline. Two battle their way through a religious apocalypse on a mission to defeat the Antichrist. When the apocalypse actually happens and 1 billion people are raptured up to heaven, Lindsay and her boyfriend are left behind in suburban Seattle. The young couple try their best to lead a normal life surrounded by talking locusts, blood rain showers, and pot-smoking wraiths. But when the beast makes his home base in their neighborhood, Lindsay finds herself the object of his affection. With the help of her family and friends and a lawn-mowing zombie neighbor, the young couple set off to stop the Antichrist from taking her as his bride, and just maybe saving the world in the process. Now, it's a comedy, obviously, but it is also along the lines of a theme that's emerging here in the month of June. Now, who is the company that is producing Rapturepalooza? Well, it just happens to be Lionsgate, who also produces Mad Men. On Wednesday, June 12th, This Is the End. And it opens, as I said, on well, it says here the 11th, but it opens on the 12th. Here's the storyline for this. Follows 6 friends trapped in a house after a series of strange and catastrophic events devastate Los Angeles. As the world unravels outside, dwindling supplies and cabin fever threaten to tear apart the friendships inside. Eventually, they are faced to leave the house, facing their fate and the true meaning of friendship and redemption. Okay? So here we have After Earth, The Purge, Rapturepalooza, and This Is the End. All in June, all happening within 1 week. Then we have Man of Steel, one of the umpteen Superman movies that have been created and recreated in my lifetime. On the 21st, World War Z. World War Z is another apocalyptic film starring Brad Pitt, Matthew Fox, Bryan Cranston. A researcher for the UN Post-War Commission interviews survivors of the flesh-eating zombie attack from all over the world in order to put together a post-mortem on a war that destroyed every country around the globe. Can you see a theme emerging here? It's not a great theme, I'll tell you that right now. This is all in June. Now there is a movie called Redemption opening in June. I don't even know what that's about. What is that about? Yeah. It's a Jason Statham movie. Jason Statham, of course, is a action hero. And then there's White House Down. That's at the end of the month, June 28th. It's a Roland Emmerich epic. And of course, Roland Emmerich is the guy that brought us War of the Worlds the day after. He's the go-to man. He also did 2012. He's the go-to man for the powers that be, the go-to director for the powers that be for major motion pictures that want to insert major meme implementation. It stars Channing Tatum and Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx plays the president, by the way. Any kind of visual connotation to anybody else we know, perhaps? Like current president? Here's a synopsis for White House Down. Capitol Policeman John Cale, formerly of the Velvet Underground, has just been denied his dream job at the Secret Service of protecting President James Sawyer, Jamie Foxx. Not wanting to let down his little girl with the news, he takes her on a tour of the White House when the complex is overtaken by heavily armed paramilitary. Now the nation's government falling into chaos and time running out, it's up to Cale to save the president, his daughter, and the country. So there we go. Those are the movies that are coming to you in June. That's just June. Crazy. Crazy end of the world movie palooza. I'm looking at Channing Tatum's upcoming films, and he's going to be in a film. Oh, this is going to be interesting. This should be interesting. This is in 2014. I hope we're around to see this. The title of the film is called Jupiter Ascending, and it's directed by the Wachowskis, and it stars Channing Tatum as Django Wise and Mila Kunis as Jupiter. The storyline here is Jupiter Jones was born under a night sky with signs predicting that she was destined for great things. Now grown, Jupiter dreams of the stars, but wakes up to the cold reality of job cleaning toilets and an endless run of bad breaks. Only when Kane, Channing Tatum, a genetically engineered ex-military hunter, arrives on Earth to track her down, does Jupiter begin to glimpse the fate that's been waiting for her all along. Her genetic signature marks her as next in line for an extraordinary inheritance that could alter the balance of the cosmos. Interesting stuff from the Wachowski brothers. Looks like it's treading Fifth Element material. So anyway, that's what's happening cinematically. There is a theme at work. There's also some other films opening in June that I think are of great interest. And one of them, let me see if I can find it. I just saw this. One of them is a film called Dirty Wars, and I think it's a documentary, IFC Films. And the storyline for Dirty Wars is investigative reporter Jeremy Scahill traces the rise of the Joint Special Operations Command, the most secret fighting force in U.S. history, exposing operations carried out by men who do not exist on paper and will never appear before Congress. No target is off limits for the JSOC kill list, even a U.S. citizen. This is actually airing on the 7th of June, and it's an IFC movie, so check that out. That's going to be in theaters as well. So there's a lot of really interesting cinema coming at you, and most of it, obviously, with the theme. Okay, I'm done talking about these things. If you would like a reading, call me, 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. On Friday, I'll be joined by ufologist and experiencer Sasha Claire Christie. She was a presenter at Amank recently in England, and she'll be on the show to talk about the most current state of affairs as it relates to UFOs, disclosure, who's real, who's not real, and what it's all about. She is really interesting astrologically. She's a no-holds-barred Scorpio, and she's quite funny as well. So I highly recommend you tune into Friday's show if you want to find out what's happening with the latest in disclosure, ufology, and all the other stuff that goes along with it. Next Friday, I'm going to have John Trudell back with me, and we're going to be talking more about the Heart Hemp Project and what's going on with the legalization of hemp. And I was going to have him on this Friday, but he just did an interview with my friend Stephen Kent in Berkeley yesterday, and John was in studio with him and actually did some freestyling with Stephen on Didgeridoo, and Stephen is going to send me that track, so I'm going to be able to play that next Friday when John is on the air. I'm looking forward to that. So, and catching up with Trudell, who's starting to get really geared up into this hemp movement. And I might even ask him about Angelina Jolie. We'll see about that. So he'll be on next Friday, and this Friday, Sasha Claire Christie. Okay, the number here, 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. I want to give a big shout-out to Dee, who is helping me wrangle some guests. She was instrumental in helping me hook up with James Gilliland. If you haven't heard that interview from last week, go to the archives. It's a great interview. I'm really happy with it, proud of it. And even the interview with Courtney Brown, although I don't really feel like I did a lot of the interviewing. I think I just lobbed him a few questions. And you can tell Courtney's done this before because he was off and running once the mic was opened. But even Courtney's material is very interesting. And I had a number of people thank me for having him on the show. So if you haven't listened to last week's show, I highly recommend it. You can find that archive here on Blog Talk and also on YouTube, two places that you can experience it and listen to it. All right, so let me give you the number one more time, 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. Why don't we look at a few birthdays today and see what's happening on the birthday tip. Since we're in Gemini, there was a time in my life, I have Gemini on my descendant, there was a time in my life where I kept having Gemini girlfriends. That was unusual and kind of nerve-wracking in some ways. You never knew who you'd show up with sometimes with the Gemini, who would show up with you. Okay, so let's just blow through some birthdays today. Anybody interesting? Let's see what we have here. Well, there's Oswald Spengler, the great German Proto-Aryan mystic. Interesting guy, very controversial. Let's see, Al Unser, the race car driver. John F. Kennedy. There's an interesting birthday, huh? Do you know that John F. Kennedy and John Hinckley were born on the same day? How about that? How about them apples? Bob Hope, a great player in the MK Ultra universe. It's his birthday today as well. So Bob Kennedy, JFK, and John Hinckley, along with Oswald Spengler. That's quite a, let's throw in Paul Ehrlich, the economist. That's quite a starting five, don't you think? If we're going to be using basketball terminology. Anybody else today of interest? Igor Konstanovich, the Prince of Russia, whoever that guy is. T.H. White, the author, the famous author, it's also his birthday today as well. Yesterday, Kennedy. Man, I've done so much stuff on Kennedy on my website. It's not even crazy. It's not even funny. Let's see. What else do we have? Yesterday, we had Rudy Giuliani, one of the great sellouts of our time. I can't even look at that guy without wanting to vomit. Thomas More, the mystic, the great mystic. Thomas More wasn't really a mystic. Thomas More was more of a religious theologian he was almost like a barrister in some ways. Thomas More was he was the guy that would not grant King Henry his divorce so that he could marry Anne Boleyn. And Thomas More was summarily decapitated by King Henry because of his betrayal. And there's a movie starring Paul Scofield called A Man for All Seasons, which is an amazing movie, incredible movie. Scofield won Best Actor for his portrayal of Thomas More. More, of course, also wrote Utopia, famous book. So it was More's birthday yesterday. And let's see, Jim Thorpe, the great athlete, one of the greatest athletes of all time, tragic story. His birthday was yesterday. A lot of really good athletes born in the month of June, or in May, June. Yesterday, major basketball player day, Armin Gillian, who played for the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Glenn Rice, the big-time shooter from the University of Michigan, it was his birthday. John Fogerty of Creedence Clearwater Revival, his birthday. Lots and lots and lots of really interesting birthdays yesterday in the month of Gemini. Okay, so if there are any people in the chat room or in the queue. There's somebody here for a reading. This reminds me of when I used to do tarot readings on the street, waiting for somebody to come by and sit in my chair. Hello there.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
You're on the air.
Okay, good. Friday's my birthday, so I was because the asteroid's coming on the same day.
Right. What's your name?
Carly.
Carly?
Yeah.
Okay, so Carly, Friday's your birthday. Are you freaked out?
No, I'm excited.
Okay. So I mentioned Gemini girlfriends. One of my I had a very important person in my life who was born on that day, May 31st. It's also Walt Whitman's birthday. Let's see. You don't want to hear about Walt Whitman, do you? You just want to hear about you. Okay. What time?
It's not all about me.
Yeah. What time were you born on? And what year?
Okay. May 31st, 1967, 12:36 in the afternoon in Fresno, California.
Okay. All right. Fresno, California. There we go. Okay. So I have you as obviously Gemini, Sun, and let's see, Virgo ascendant, and Moon in Taurus. Does that sound right?
I had Moon in Pisces.
You have Moon in Pisces. Let me do this again then. Just want to make sure. May 31st, 1967.
Right.
12:36 p.m.
12:36 p.m. Yeah.
Fresno, California.
Correct.
Yeah. I have you as Moon in Taurus. Let me Let me do this.
Well, I know the node is in Taurus.
Let me do this. Let me just switch my software up a bit and try to get into another program just to make sure.
Okay.
Because okay, so let's say Carly in Fresno, California, the home of the Bulldogs.
It's the gateway to the Yosemite.
7 and 12:39 p.m. Is that right? Again?
36.
12:36 p.m. And all right, so let's roll this out. There it is. Okay, I'm not sure why the other program was doing what it did. I'll have to, which is why I asked people, so is this what it is? Because I don't want to just launch into this stuff.
Right.
So what would you like to know or understand or work with here?
Well, I don't really understand what's going on in the ninth house. Like the node is in the ninth house.
Yeah.
So, and it's in the sign of Taurus. So I don't really have a grasp on what that really
means. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So when we look at the key to the node, the north node, often lies in the south node. If you can't define or unfamiliar with the prospect of the north node, then you get into what you don't want with the south node.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, the south node, at least to me, in the third house and in Scorpio, represents a certain type of thinking that is, for lack of a better term, I hate to use this term, negative.
Mm-hmm.
Negative thinking, because Scorpio is a fixed sign, and when we look at the third house represents a number of different things. It represents thought and communication. It represents the world around us, just sort of like around the block, or around the corner, around town. It doesn't have the same kind of expanse and scope as the ninth house. It also represents brothers and sisters and extended family. That's the third house, and so that's the frame set. And then we look at the south node. The south node is kind of what we want to move away from. I mean, there are interpretations which I actually sign on with, that the south node represents past lives and what we've done in past lives, and that what we're here to do is we're here to move to the north node, and we're here to move towards something that is more pertinent to our evolution. So when it's in Scorpio, what we have in a lot of ways in the third house, for lack of a better term, what I would call addiction to superstitious thought. Meaning that you would get, that you've been in a place in past lives where you have been under the assumption or under the spell of a certain type of localized thinking. And that could be associated with, let's say, for instance, you're part of a tribe somewhere, and that tribe had a series of superstitions, or that tribe had a series of beliefs, and those beliefs were used in order to make sense of the chaos in the world around them, but also dealing with, at times, probably very real forces of darkness and supernatural powers that were kind of rampant in the collective or in the psyche. So that particular in the third house with Scorpio there would tell you to move away from that kind of thinking, to move away from limited, superstitious, negative, belief-inducing thinking, because we're talking about fixed signs here. Okay.
Right.
So
that, like,
it would be like, I feel like I'm cursed. I feel like what I do is cursed. Or I feel like, there's a sense of bad luck, or bad luck that's attached to some kind of superstitious thought. But it also relates to the world around you and that thought becoming manifest in your day-to-day life or your day-to-day reality, people reflecting that back. So what you have to do is you have to kind of expand your thoughts. You have to expand your thinking. You've got to move beyond that. And when we get into the ninth house, right, if the third house is like localized beliefs, in kind of supernatural systems or ideology, the ninth house is much bigger cosmologies. The ninth house represents religion, represents all the big religions. And so what your true node is attempting to do for you up in the ninth house is to expand your cosmology, to expand yourself and go beyond the sort of the localized thought forms of the third house. So it's there for you to expand and to explore. And it's not just thinking, but it's also geographies and getting out of your rut, getting out of your local rut, and exploring other cultures, exploring other religions, and exploring them in a way that is physical, because Taurus is a very physical sign. And so you're here in a lot of ways also to get out of your mind or to get out of your emotional mind and into your body. One of the things that I would recommend to you, if you really want to, tap into your true node in the ninth house, is to take up something like mountain climbing. And when I say mountain climbing, I don't mean like climbing the Swiss Alps or something like that, but, climbing hills or, going for hikes where you can get...
Yeah, I already do. I do that already. I'm totally into doing things in nature.
So you're tapping into your north node then, which is good, which is really, really good. And the north node in the ninth house brings you into more of a sense of unity in some ways through your contact with nature, right? In the third house, which is interesting, it's kind of like the third house with supernatural thought or beliefs or superstitions. It's a way to deal with the chaos of nature, but by going really into nature and expanding it through the ninth, it takes you out of that and it takes you into kind of a broader appreciation. Have you ever read Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman?
No.
Okay, well, you share the same birthday as Walt Whitman. It's one of the best poems. It's one of the best poems in the English language. And to me, Leaves of Grass really is kind of a ninth house meditation. It's an incredible poem, and maybe I'll read some of it before the show is over. You should check it out, seriously.
Yeah, I will.
Because Whitman is one of the first poets that breaks with iambic pentameter in America. So he's sort of the father of free verse. It's interesting. You'd like the poem. Anyway, the ninth house for you is to expand your belief system, and to expand your belief system in a physical kind of way. That it's not just ideology. It's something you can touch, you can feel, you can taste, and it gives you a sense of really being on terra firma. You have a really interesting 10th house with Mercury and your part of fortune, and also Gemini Sun. Do you write at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, sort of, but not a lot. I mean, I'm not really good at spelling and stuff, so everything's really slow. But I try to. I get distracted a lot.
Well, yeah, I can see that. But you have writing potential. If you ever decided to write travel books, you'd be good at it.
Oh, well, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, because yeah.
Go.
Well, actually, me and my friend, we had talked about we go on trail rides on the horses, and I always talk about, well, we should map out and take photos and write down and chart the trail so other people will know what they're about. But we just haven't done it.
Uh-huh.
But it's a thought.
Well, that'd be a great idea. You know, that'd be really. I mean, you've got Mercury at Cancer 0 degrees in the 10th house.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Part of fortune, Gemini, writing. You know, it's conjunct your sun. It's 6 degrees off your sun, and your sun is only 5 degrees off your midheaven. So you're here to communicate. You're here to communicate, and maybe just say it one more time. You're here to communicate and write. And part of that is definitely writing. And the thing with Mars in Cancer is that, you know, Cancer is it's a cardinal sign. I'm sorry, Mercury in Cancer. It's a cardinal sign, so it initiates, it gets things going. But Cancer is kind of weird. It needs the right conditions too.
Right.
So you need for you to write and share and communicate. Things have to be kind of in the right place. Now Jupiter's coming into Cancer, and it's going to conjunct your Mercury very soon. So that really should be kind of an interesting time for you in terms of like an explosion of ideas, and really getting some inspiration during this Jupiter transit across your Mercury. Your Mercury is exactly conjunct my Mars, which is 0 degrees. So it's a very psychic degree for Cancer. So you have a lot of psychic energy too, a lot of psychic ability. Do you tap into that at all?
I do with animals. I mean, I can read them very well. I mean, not so much with humans, but
that's a really nice. That's a nice.
Maybe because I don't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well,
I was going to say, just because I don't trust a lot of humans. I mean, but animals are innocent.
Sure. Unless you play poker with the chimpanzee, you got to watch out for that. Okay. Anything else for you, Carly?
No, that's it. That's great. That's some good information, and I'm going to, put that in my little file cabinet and do something with it.
All right. Leaves of Grass.
I'll read that and check that out.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So the reason I think Leaves of Grass is so great, it's a great poem to begin with, but should I tell you about my personal life, personal history? Maybe I'll do a few readings and I'll come back to it. Let's go to our good friend from across the pond, Miss Jody. Hello, Jody.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Okay, fair to middling.
Fair to middling. How's your boy?
Yeah, he's okay. He's getting over the chicken pox now.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so still got a few red marks, but yeah, he's not doing too bad. But I was kind of phoning in to the eclipse hit me quite hard. I've got Mars in Gemini at 5 degrees and Moon in Sagittarius at 5. So I was kind of looking for your perspective on that, really.
Wow, that's pretty intense. So that eclipse was happening right opposite your Mars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Did you have any kind of major emotional discord or upset during that time?
Not during the eclipse itself, but sort of, I guess, just after. Because is it right that you feel the effects for 2 weeks after? Is that correct?
Yeah, there is the notion that the eclipse lingers, like in waves, for sure.
Yeah.
So you felt the aftermath of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, 1 minute I was feeling fine, and the next minute it was like being blown out of the water. Just kind of totally floored one day to the next. It's like being a different person. I don't know.
So the eclipse was opposite your Mars, and what was it on? Your Moon or your ascendant?
The Moon.
So you had an eclipse conjunction with your Moon.
Yes.
Wow. Well, it's about expanding your emotional horizons. It's It's what it's about. It's the revelation. It is the revelation of dark mystery through the unfoldment of truth and the expanding of emotional horizons beyond the locale. I mean, so whatever's happening as part of the eclipse, because you have Moon in Sagittarius, everything about Sagittarius that I've ever experienced is about, rounding off to the next level. It's getting to the next level. It's getting to the next level. It's getting to the next level. And so sometimes it happens in manageable ways, and sometimes it happens in ways in which we deem in the moment that they're not manageable, but down the line, after we've lived a bit and we see the after effects of what's taken place, we can understand the perfection at times, and it's hard because we have limited perspective. And when it comes to Sagittarius, it's all about wisdom, and it's all about the accrual of wisdom and the kind of the mastering of one's own personal philosophy as it relates to faith. Everything about Sagittarius is faith-based. And when you have Moon opposing your Mars like that, it can get a little tricky because Mars in Gemini is like the monkey mind. Mars in Gemini can be really meddling and can get in the way of things. Like there can be too much control. I'll give you an example from like my childhood. So when I was a kid, we were given this experiment to do. I think it was like the 3rd grade, and we were given these milk cartons, and we cut the milk cartons in half. We put dirt in there, and we all had a lima bean, and we were all given a schedule to water the lima bean with. Okay, and my schedule to water my lima bean was every 3rd day, and right. I thought that by watering my lima bean every day, that my plant would grow faster than everybody else's, because I was under the false assumption that you watered a plant every day, that it was really good for a plant, and I wanted my plant to be the tallest. And the teacher kept looking at my plant. She would say, This is after about a week or so, a week and a half. She said, my name was Bobby then. She said, Bobby, your plant is supposed to be the biggest. I don't know what happened. And I just kept my mouth shut. And it's like, oh man, I've been watering this plant every day. I screwed it up. I got in the way, right? So that's like Mars in Gemini. Mars in Gemini wants to speed things along and move things along, but it gets in the way of it sometimes. And Moon in Sagittarius, this is kind of an interesting, dichotomy in your chart. Moon in Sagittarius is more about being observational and philosophical, and I wouldn't necessarily say passive because Sagittarius is a fire sign, but it's about, we're dealing with emotions, and we're dealing with love as it relates to the emotions. And Mars in Gemini, wants to excite things and move things along faster at times, and the Moon in Sagittarius would be more predisposed to sitting back and, kind of being more expansive. And when I think of Sagittarius in that way, I think of creating more of a vibration, or more of an aura of positivity and excitement and adventure. And as a result of that, the movement towards love or what I would call reciprocal emoting would come into your life quite easy, because people just want to be around that. They just want to be around the positivity. They want to be around this sense of confidence and adventure and, faith and beauty in life that the Moon Sagittarius has. But then Mars in Gemini comes in and says details, 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 details. And the key to that is like, well, how do you get them on the same page? That's hard. That's a really hard piece. You're here to figure this out. And I would bet that this eclipse, which has taken place, is a recalibrating or reordering for you to go deeper into that and to understand that more. And sometimes the universe just has the first move. it doesn't have the final say. Maybe it does at times, but it certainly has the first move. And I think, again, based on this, that you'll see the effects unfold even more as I would say by the time we get to obviously late November, December, where you'll have a sun-moon conjunction. I think you'll understand a lot more what's happened by then. For now, okay. I think you just need to let go and philosophize and, kind of understand it, at least from a place where your faith isn't completely blown out. Like you will have your day, you will have your moment, you will have your emotional reciprocity, if it's not now, but it will come, because that's really the Sagittarian logos or mindset. And the Mars piece, flipping around with that, what house is Mars in your chart?
The 10th house, I think.
10th house.
Yeah. Let me just check that. Yeah, 10th.
Okay. So now we get into like dancing, dancing with the opposition. So you want to play with Mars. You want to get busy. You want to do things in terms of the world, maybe in terms of writing or communicating or whatever it is that's going to be that, Mars Gemini aspect in the world that you can latch on to and let it work for you and be your chariot for a while and not flip out or trip out about what's happened too much, right?
Because I've also got, I think it's Neptune transiting and it's conjunct my moon at the moment. Is that, or where's Neptune at the moment? Is it in Sag?
Neptune's in Pisces.
So it's opposite my moon at the moment. Is that right? There's definitely something that Astro.com keeps telling me.
Your moon is in Sag.
Yeah.
How could I don't think Neptune.
So
it's doing some sort of natal Neptune.
No.
No.
I don't know. When I log on to Astro.com and I go to the personal daily horoscopes, it keeps telling me something about the moon and Neptune.
Yeah,
so maybe it's a square.
It's squaring your moon.
Okay.
It's
squaring. I'm not up on these things like you do.
You've got a T-square. You've got a T-square going on. So, moon square Neptune. It's about having to deal with illusion, delusion, loss, lack of faith, loss of hope. It's about I hate to say it, but it's kind of like it's about being realistic and scaling back, and it's going to be there for a while. I
know it's doing my nut. I'm ready for it to go now.
But at the end of the day, I mean, what does it mean? It's like you can become more pragmatically mystical. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about show me. It's about being pragmatically mystical in an emotional sense without completely losing touch with your faith. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a hard thing to go through, because when things go wrong for people, the first place we go to is cynicism or loss or doubt, or it's human nature. That this is what we go through, and for some people, they work through these emotional pieces that they get hit with, and then they come through the other side of it, wiser and more, sort of burnished, for lack of a better term. For some people, it doesn't happen for some people. Some people get hit with emotional turbulence in their lives, and they don't, and they'll go down, and they'll go down a very deep rabbit hole. I mean, this is where addiction comes into play, and codependency, and all the stuff that that people get caught up into because they're really going for a major reset in their lives, even though they don't know it. But people that are beyond that, and I think you're beyond that. You've got a son. You can't afford to go into those dark places, so you have to have a more pragmatic approach. You have to look at this from a place of, okay, well,
the bloom is off or whatever that thing is. And then you say, well, what next? How do I deal with this? How do I stay strong and, stay motivated and don't lose complete and utter faith in life? And that's part of your own personal journey. So I just think that the Mars piece in the 10th house is where you kind of want to focus on, especially since you're having a Mars return. That would be the equivalent of somebody throwing themselves into their work, and doing it in a way that is conscious. Because sometimes people throw themselves into their work when they go through a time of crisis, and it's unconscious, and then they have to reintegrate that. So I think that if you consciously say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to work on a book, or I'm going to apply for a new job, or, I'm going to learn how to become a tour guide in London, or whatever that thing is, that's Mars Gemini related. It gives you some focus, and it can take you out of the cross of suffering. So that's what I think.
Thanks, Robert.
All right, Jody, you hang in there, and really glad you're part of this program and the show, and you hang out in the chat room and have made a lot of really nice connections with a bunch of folks, and I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I love the chat, love the regular callers. Hi to everyone.
All right.
Okay.
You take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
All right. Let's go to the 770 area code.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm calling.
Where are you calling from?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta. And what is your name?
Maddie.
Hi, Maddie.
Hi.
Do you want to give me your birth data?
January the 7th, 1945, and the time was 6:49 p.m.
January 7th. Let's see. Atlanta, Georgia?
I'm sorry, Cosbert, Georgia.
How do you spell that?
Cuthbert.
Cosworth?
Cosbert.
Okay.
Cuthbert.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. At 6:49, 20 seconds p.m.
Okay. All right, so January 7th. I'm sorry, I'm a little behind here.
Mm-hmm.
January 7th. And what was the year again? I'm sorry?
1945.
1945. And the time?
6:49 and 20 seconds p.m.
6:49. Mm-hmm. You got the seconds down. That's awesome. I like that. Okay. It was Gladys Knight's birthday yesterday.
Whose?
Gladys Knight. Gladys Knight and the Pips.
Oh, it was her birthday yesterday?
Yeah, midnight train to Georgia. Just thought I'd throw that out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So where do you want to go?
She's Gemini.
She is a Gemini. That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite bits of all time on TV was on the Richard Pryor show. Did you ever see the Richard Pryor show?
I saw some of the episodes, yes.
He had one episode where he had the Pips on, not Gladys Knight, just the Pips. And they did Midnight Train to Georgia, but all they did was their bit was no Gladys Knight. It was really funny, I have to say. Because
I believe it.
Yeah, he says, we couldn't afford Gladys Knight and the Pips. We could only afford the Pips. So here are the Pips doing their part. Midnight Train to Georgia. It's hilarious. All right, so where do we want to go here with you? What do you want? Where do you want to?
There is I have a grand trine in my chart.
Yes,
and
you do.
Pardon me?
Yes, you do.
And I was told that a grand trine is going to hit this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder what effect it would have on me.
Right. Epic love affair.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
When you say epic, meaning?
Great, meaning like profound, meaning life-changing.
Oh, my God.
Yeah? How does that sound?
I've been wanting that, yes.
Okay. Well, it's coming. It's coming at you.
I love it. I love it.
Somebody from your past.
Someone from my past?
Yes.
You know what?
What?
I am talking to someone from my past. We went to school together. He contacted me last year of August, and I don't recall being in class with him, but he remembers me well. And we've been talking since August of last year. And we had a class reunion a couple of weeks ago. He came, and it didn't go too well.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw him in person, it didn't go too well. But I thought I think we have a connection, but something starting off was not right. And so I thought, and someone said to me, just let him know that you care for him, and he will open up and be very positive with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I agree with that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason I say that is because you have Venus in the 8th house, and it's in Pisces, and there is a feeling, or kind of an aura around that Venus about connections, emotional connections emerging from your personal history, from your legacy. And also because of where Saturn is in your 12th house in Cancer, we're dealing with, the kind of the early years of your life with Cancer, and Saturn in the 12th again is hidden, and somebody emerging from the sort of the oceanic tides of your past. And then of course your moon comes into play here in Scorpio in the 4th house. So the 4th house again is relating to not necessarily where you grew up, but very close. It's the home. It's around the home. Again, because you're dealing with Scorpio 8th house energy, it's about legacy, personal history, things like that. So my sense is that it's somebody from your past, and it's profound because it's what do we have here? There's Neptune, which is just a few degrees off of your moon. I'm sorry, Venus, and moving backwards. You're going to have a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in the 12th. That's a really profound conjunction. It's feeling as though like you're being met for the first time, and being seen for the first time, and being recognized for the first time, and feeling as though you actually have a place here in this world. Because a lot of times people that have Saturn in the 12th, wow, this show's almost over. People have Saturn in the 12th house don't often feel like they belong here on this planet. There's a sense of loneliness with Saturn in the 12th house. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm seeing here.
Oh, wonderful news.
Yeah.
Wonderful news. So someone from my past, and it's amazing that that man has been in my palm for many years.
Yeah.
And because a palmist I know, she said, where's that man? I want you guys to connect. I said, I don't know what no man you're talking about. And she said, that's someone. The last time I saw her, last year in June, she said, that's someone from your past, someone perhaps you went to school with.
Yeah.
It's coming. That you guys have not connected yet, but he's there.
Yeah.
And I say, but okay. So it's going to be be profound. Okay.
Yeah, profound. Get ready.
You're ready. So it might be a marriage. Might be a marriage going on.
It could be. You're ready. You're ready for it.
I am. Yep. So perhaps there might be a wedding someday.
Yes. 8th house. Absolutely. House of weddings.
8th house is the house of weddings?
That's what my friend Kair Love says. I'll agree with him.
Now, years ago when I was told that I had a grand trine in my chart, back then they said it considered as a lucky chart. Do you what do you look at as being?
Grand trine can be lucky. It's in water signs. 2 of the houses are hidden houses, though, and you have Moon in Scorpio, which is in its fall. So it's a good trine, but it's not. It's hard to access at times. You also have a T-square as well, and your T-square is pretty intense. So But I would say the key with the water.
What's a T-square? What's a T-square?
T-square is when you have planets that are in opposition, and one planet's in opposition at 180 degrees, and then there's a planet splitting them at 90 degrees, so it's 90, 90, 180. So you have a T-square. And let me see, your T-square is in, it's Venus, and it is, what else? Where is she? Where's that Venus? Sun, Capricorn, Gemini. The T-square is with your Sun, with your Saturn, and with Neptune. That's your T-square. You have Neptune at 6 degrees in Libra. You have Saturn at 6 degrees, Cancer, and then you have the Sun at 17 degrees. It's a wide T-square. It's Mars. Sorry, it's Mars, Capricorn. So it's Mars, Neptune, and Saturn. That's your T-square. So, and T-squares are meant for growth.
T-squares what?
They're meant for growth. The T-square is meant for growth, yeah. The key to your grand water trine is about feeling emotion, and when I say invoking, it's about bringing people and experiences into your life through emotions and feeling kind of magnetic and drawing what you need to you based on the power of your own personal feeling. And if you understand that, then you can have wonderful experiences come to you in your life. But it's about staying in touch with your emotions and honoring your emotions. You do that, and you will be able to, throughout the rest of your days, have a really wonderful life. That's what that trine is about. And,
okay. And since you said that, I have done that occasionally.
Yeah. Well,
I really have. I would say with my emotions.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you one more piece, and then we have to transit out of here. But there is a grand trine happening very shortly. It happens in June and then a little bit in July. And what it is, it's the trine between Neptune and Saturn and Jupiter, and it's pretty much going to play out on your own grand trine. So this is actually a really good time for you. And I would say, more than anything, cultivate inside of yourself a feeling as though something great is going to happen. And just know it every day. I just know something great is going to happen. I just know it. And even when you get a small little thing that is really kind of cool, like maybe somebody opens a door for you, you know, let that feed that great thing happening. Yeah, I feel that. This is another wonderful little sign that something great, profound is going to happen. So allow for the small to come in and wait for the big, okay?
I will, because, you know, it's amazing you said that, because I have already started feeling that.
Good.
Just feeling happy.
Good. That's excellent.
Oh, but thank you for confirming that for me. Oh, right. Wow. It's good to, I'm glad that I spoke with you, because I knew it was there, but no one ever explained to it the grand trine to me like the way that you did today.
Okay. Well, I'm happy.
I was told it was a good luck chart. You know.
I'm happy to do that for you, Maddie.
Thank you very much.
Okay. You take good care. Bye-bye.
I will. Bye-bye.
All right. I got time for one more call here. Even though we are now officially off the air, we are in the podcast version of the show. Let's go to the 213 and take the last reading of the day. Here we go. Hello there.
Oh, hi, it's Ann. I was just going to tell you, I have that trine coming up in June, too, and I've had readings recently when I had to blow off the flea market because of the rain. And everybody's telling me, like, June is exploding off the map. And I keep getting job offers. It's just like crazy. You know, like
awesome.
The girl that I read for at the flea market is involved in the paranormal. It's also on the Blog Talk Radio Paranormal. She asked me if I would at Relay for Life at their booth and give part of the proceeds to Relay for Life. I had another guy give me a reading and say, oh, that's what I want to do. He said, would you work for me in the middle of the reading? And he's going to do his own network, psychic network.
Oh,
and
wow.
He said if the people that are going to do it, he said that he knows they're going to do it. If they don't do it, he said, I will do it myself. And he has like a day job, like also a corporate day job, which he planned on leaving also. And I have an ex who has Mars in Gemini. So, I don't know. The whole thing's starting to go down in June, I guess.
Yeah.
But I had been. So maybe I'm just manifesting it, you know. Oh, also, I had somebody that I used to work with pass. He was an Aquarius, and I didn't know that. I kept getting his name before it happened, but I didn't realize that it was someone from work. And I went to the wake. You know where the wake was? In Newtown, at the funeral parlor that did all of the wakes for the children in Newtown. I got to tell you, this past weekend, I was just like, I wanted to be passed out. I was just exhausted. So I don't know whether it was going through that or what. You know?
That's intense. That's intense.
It was, oh my God! It was like, and I just about made it there, you know. So.
Yeah.
But that was sad. But I don't know. My moon is 17 degrees Cancer, and I'm in Aquarius, and I'm Libra rising. So, but I have Mars in Scorpio on the second house. So I assume that's what some of this is, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, you know, and Saturn is where's Saturn in relation to your Mars?
Saturn is sextile. It is 14 degrees Libra, retrograde.
No. What degree is your Mars?
My Mars is 8 degrees, so it hasn't come up.
Saturn's sitting right on your Mars. So Saturn's sitting on your. So the second house is how we make money, right? It's how we manifest our our day-to-day stuff, our essentials. And when I had Uranus and Neptune transiting my second house, I was doing psychic readings. I was on a psychic hotline because I was employing Neptune and Uranus, unusual and then perceptive and spiritual, to help make money in my life. And so Mars in Scorpio is very psychic,
It's North Node. I have Pisces North Node.
But it's also instinctual, Mars and Scorpio, and it's about manifesting and making money. So Saturn's sitting on your Mars, and Saturn's making pay attention to that.
See, I'm always thinking that Saturn is being restrictive,
No,
I guess I could like an escrow type thing.
Yeah, no, I think Saturn can be very instructive, and it points to where you need to focus. And there is restriction along with it, but it's restricting you because he wants you to focus there. And when you focus there, then the reward comes.
Well, that's true, because every single day my regular, the corporate thing gets worse. And yet I probably need to stay there at least another year,
Well, you stay there until GOD/universe says it's time to move. And then it's time. You'll know when that time is.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
All right. Guy who offered me the job was Libra, Virgo rising. So I thought that was interesting.
That's solid. Virgo rising. That's pretty solid. Good at communicating and networking. Virgo rising pays attention to details. That's a good person to be in business with.
That's what I think. And that's his background. IT is his background. So I guess I can believe that. Some of the rest of it, a lot of them were telling me this romantic stuff. So I'm assuming at this point it could be the guy with the Mars in Gemini. Let's see, Moon in Aquarius, Sun in Cancer, but Saturn in Virgo. So.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, listen, I gotta jump off now.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
So, okay.
Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye, Ann. All right, that's it. You have been listening to Navigating the Astrological Matrix. I'm your host, Robert Phoenix, and Join me on Friday. Sasha Claire Christie, and hopefully another guest. Until then, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Take very, very, very good care of yourself. Adios.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.